answer. And part B has 4 questions, and you need to answer any 3 of them. All questions are of equal marks, so basically 25 marks out of 100 for each of the 4 questions. It's a closed book examination, so you can't refer to notes. Those of you who have the textbook, you can't bring it in with you, and so on. I've made a note on the cover. Throughout the exam, please write as clearly as you can. Identify the question number and part that you're answering. So example, question 1A. If that's what you're answering, can you kind of mark 1A so that I can work out what it is that you're doing? I know that sounds pretty obvious, but it's astonishing how many people don't. Okay, question 1, which is the essential question that everyone has to answer. I've given you some information about a fictitious company. It's a Perth-based supplier of stuff. I won't dwell on it. But basically the company is, for those of you who just arrived on, I'm talking about what's in the exam. So you might want to, I'm only at question 1, so it's okay. But it's a fictitious company, Perth-based. It manufactures and supplies a particular product. It is thinking about expanding its sales to other parts of the world, and it is thinking about having some of the manufacturing done in another part of the world. So the questions are along the lines of, if it's making money, why does it want to do anything differently? Why would it want to proceed in the way that's set out in the question? How should it go about expanding its business into other companies? Should it use partners? Should it use, or how should it go about it? How might it look at developing its market in the new area? Remember when we talked briefly about marketing, we talked about in some places it's really easy to, the distribution's really easy, in other places all of the activities are kind of centralised, and all of the chain, the distribution chain kind of stuff, and we'll talk about that a little more today. So it's those kinds of questions, how to develop its market, and the next question is about what risks might it face in its plans. It's a pretty good exam briefing, isn't it? All I haven't told you is where. Okay, so that's the first one, and it covers a lot of the topics, like the globalisation stuff is in there a bit as to why would it be looking to expand and what are the risks of expanding. There's the marketing kind of stuff, there's the entry into new markets kind of stuff, that's all in there. So this question addresses a lot of the content from the course, and strategy as well. Second question of the optional 4 talks about Brexit and Mr. Trump and all those kinds of things, and it's really a question about the globalisation kind of issue, and what are the implications of all of that kind of stuff. I also have a question in here about other kind of, I'll tell you what it is, about global warming, climate change, that kind of stuff, what are the implications of that, those sorts of things for international business, those sorts of things. So that's question 2. Question 3 talks about culture, and it asks you to discuss the dimensions of culture proposed by one or others of some of the scholars that you have studied in great detail for this course. And I suspect that if I've got 67 people in the class, I suspect 64, maybe 65, we'll talk about Gear Hofstede. But perhaps I'm wrong, perhaps you will have fallen in love with another scholar. It talks about some of there are questions about some of the other issues that or cultural dimensions that cultural approaches to understanding culture, like context, and it talks about cross-cultural communication, those sorts of things, and it asks to discuss that. There's a question in there about language and ethnicity, and by virtue of those sorts of issues, what are the implications for our understanding of culture? It's around that kind of area. So always a toss-up. How specific am I going to be here? I don't want to tell you everything, but I want you to know what's in the paper so that it's not a surprise. Okay, question 4 looks at staffing policies and practices, all the HR kind of stuff that we covered 2 weeks ago. It looks at, there are questions like, should people be paid, if they work for the same company, should they be paid the same in other parts of the world? Those sorts of questions. There's something about performance evaluation in there. Is that something that should be standardised or adapted to different places? There's a question about expatriates. Okay. And question 5 is about strategy and the kind of stuff that we're going to cover today. It talks, the questions along the lines of, can you use the same kind of approach to doing business in different places? Can you standardise, or do you have to adapt what you do? So, and a lot of it's about that kind of stuff, the whole international business area, domain. There's a question about the business system of the country. You'll recall that I talked about business systems and it's basically the way business is done last week, or no, 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And there's a question about strategic alliances and joint ventures. Now, for each of these questions, in most of them I think there's 4 subparts. 3 of them are worth 5 marks and 1 of them are worth 10 marks as part of the exam. So a question that's worth 10 marks you might want to spend a little more time on. That's about it. Oh no, there's 4 questions that you have to answer. There's 2 hours of the paper. So how long should you spend on each question? About half an hour? Maybe a little bit less so you've got time to review it. I would strongly advise you to attempt at least 4 questions. Notice I said at least. I would strongly advise you to attempt at least 4 questions. Because if you attempt a question, you're likely to get some marks, but if you don't attempt a question, you're going to get no marks for that question. So rather than spending an hour on one question and improving your score from 15 to 17, you could spend that half hour and get a lot more than 2 more marks for another question. Now, what happens if you decide to do all 5 questions? I will give you the first of all, you have to do question 1. So that's one of the questions. And of the other 4 questions that you attempt, I'll give you the 3 highest grades. Does that make sense? Is that clear? I don't think that's a very good strategy myself, doing all 5 questions, unless you know absolutely nothing about any of them. If you know absolutely nothing about any of them, maybe it's a good strategy. At least you'll get something. Anyway, I'll leave that up to you. So, I'm hoping now that the exam holds absolutely no fears for you. Maybe not. No, this yes for you. The only good thing about exams is that I don't have to do them. So it's good for me. No, I can mark it, which is bad. Which is really bad. But that's, I guess, why I get paid. So, yeah. Are there any questions about the exam? Any questions about the presentations? I will be back, of course, for the presentations in week 11 and 12. Any issues that crop up between now and then, you can email me. Right. So today we're going to talk about